Welcome to Pass the Baton, empowering students in music education. Here, we amplify the voices of music teachers around the world who are passing the baton and creating environments where the music students are empowered. Together, we can help students transform from passive consumers to vibrant creatives. Welcome back to the Pass the Baton podcast. I'm Catherine Finch.
And I'm Teresa Hoover. We are so glad that you're here with us today. Catherine, this is our final episode for season 3. Crazy, huh?
Crazy. Yes, but exciting too for summer.
Yeah,
Yay.
it's definitely gone fast. Before we get to the official episode, though, we just want to remind you that there are going to be some show notes that you'll be able to find in the podcast player or right below the YouTube video. So be sure to check that out for various links and some of the stuff that we're going to talk about today.
Yep. And if you like today's interview, consider showing Pass the Baton some love by subscribing, following, or leaving a review wherever you listen.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. So as we said, last episode for season 3, before we take some time off for summer, we will obviously be back for season 4 next school year, but everybody deserves a little bit of a break.
Yes.
So Catherine and I was looking back, not including this interview or this episode, we had 20 new episodes for the podcast this school year, this season.
Yeah. Wow. That's awesome.
Yeah, it is. It is awesome. It's kind of fun to think, here we are on episode 71 back when we started this. So it's really, things have come a long way, and we've had the opportunity to meet some really incredible people in the field of music education.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I was even saying to you earlier, like, I've learned so much from people who are in the music education field, but like not my general music elementary, but I learned so much from talking to so many different people and their perspectives and, what they do in their room. It's really,
oh yeah. There's so much transfer, even, and I feel the same way. Like, I don't teach elementary general music, but the people we've talked to where that's their specialty, there's things that I pick up. I'm like, oh, I can use that when I'm thinking about instrumental or ensembles or anything like that. So yeah, it's really great that nothing feels like it's siloed. It feels like everything really can work together nicely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So also this year, Pass the Baton book turned 3 in November. That's also hard to believe. That's gone so fast.
It has. It's gotten so fast.
Although I guess when that book came out, we were still somewhat we were definitely in the middle of COVID. So I'm glad that we've moved on from that.
Yeah.
But we've gotten really great feedback from the book. And I love that, it's 3 years old, and sometimes books in education don't last very long.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they just by the nature of how things change. But I really think that this is, it's going to be there for a while. I think that the message is still very applicable and the strategies are applicable and all of that.
Mm-hmm. And I'm glad that people receive it the way we wanted it to, because, I feel like people say like, oh, it's been a great discussion to talk to other music educators in my building. And of course, like, that's kind of how we wanted to write it, because we felt like we need to talk about this. But also people say that it's an easy read, which is great too, because we wanted it to be something that you could pick up, read, and then start asking your own questions and talking to people near you and kind of, pushing your own thinking. So
yeah, absolutely. And that was what motivated us also to do the course through Vandercook. So we just wrapped up the first ever Pass the Baton book study for graduate credit through Vandercook College of Music. Yeah. That was another really great course. And it made me think back to what you said a minute ago about the concepts being transferable. We had teachers from all different areas of music that were in the course. And I feel like everyone was able to take things away. We had people who were teaching elementary general and high school band and middle school technology and this, and we really did. We had a lot of people, and it was fun because I felt like it was definitely a situation where everyone learned from each other.
Yeah.
Everyone read the book together. We all read the book. We all did the same kind of activities throughout. But I feel like some of the discussions and our live sessions on Zoom were just really, really impactful because everyone was sharing.
Yeah. And I think people said, right, some of their favorite things were the discussions among their own colleagues, but then also the feedback that we gave them too. So, I mean, I just said a minute ago, read a book and then go talk to the people within your music group. But for some of us, we're it. right? And
That's
so
a
the course
good
was a
point.
great way to connect people. And we were talking to people, in all different states and had all different times changes and everything, right? But it
Yeah.
doesn't matter. So you can still connect with people, even if you feel a little siloed.
Yeah.
It was a great way to reach out to music educators.
Yeah. It was a very energizing experience for me. And I think that everyone who took the course felt the same way.
Yeah.
Very cool. All right. So
So,
we're coming into summer, which is,
yes.
exciting. So from a pass the baton standpoint, it's going to be a somewhat quiet summer, which is good. We all need a break sometimes.
Me
We
too.
are working to make some updates and upgrades to the coffee club. So stay tuned for more info about that. Probably in the next coming weeks, so we'll have some information about that. Catherine, what are you up to this summer? What are you going to do with your time?
I've got a few little trips planned, especially some girl trips. My daughter's getting older. And I have a group of girls where we go and do things. And another friend has a daughter just the same age. And I don't know, I just feel like those times are gonna go if we blink to, if we don't think about it, or if we don't do something soon. So we'll have some fun girl trips and some family trips. And then I plan to kind of just lay low and relax and have slower days and have complete sentences and all the things that I feel like don't always happen at school. So I'm
Yeah.
really, yeah, excited for slower, relaxed days for sure. Walks
Good.
with the puppy for sure. But what are
Yeah.
you doing?
Yeah, so I'm actually already on summer break. Yay for the higher ed calendar system. And yes, I've already like sat down and read a book for pleasure. That was I know. It
I'm
was
so
not an
jealous.
academic homework type book. Yeah. So I mean, I do have some stuff going on. I'm going to go to Texas for a few weeks to see my sister and her family, which I'm really excited about. She has two young boys who just grow so quickly, and
Oh yeah.
I think it's been a year since I saw them. So I'm sure they're already, much bigger and older and wiser and all those things. But so I'll spend
Yeah.
some time with them. I'm also teaching a bit. I'm going to teach a class at Vandercook, the music technology moving forward class. I taught that one last summer. It was so much fun. So I'm doing that again. It's online. It's online and mostly asynchronous. So it's nice that the people who are taking the class can work on it, at their own pace.
Mhm.
And then I'll also teach a class, my Google class. I'm going to teach at ASU, which is one of my favorite things to teach. Just all things Google. But yeah, I mean, also looking forward to just kind of slowing down a little bit, taking things at a slower pace. I do
Yeah.
need to continue working because, this whole like dissertation thing, but it's just a little slower, a
Yeah. Yeah.
little more
And it sounds
relaxed.
like since you started break, you've had some downtime too. So that's good.
Yeah.
That's
Yes.
really good.
I have definitely spent some time on the couch and on the patio and
Yeah,
yeah,
that's good.
just decompressing, which was much needed. Mhm.
Ah,
Yeah. So one of our favorite things to do with this particular like end of season episode is just to look back at everything that everything we've done and the people we've talked to over the course of the podcast season. So Catherine, thinking back to season 3, if you had to pick a favorite, which I know is really hard to do, but if you had to pick like maybe like one of your favorites, what would
yeah.
you think? What do you think
I was thinking about it earlier, and I feel like I have thought a lot this spring about the question, um, asking kids, what do you want to learn? And such a loaded question. And Shane talks about this in episode 53. So I have to say that one has put a really lasting print on me. I mean, they all do, but like this one, I just like really been digging into. And so yeah, I'm still chewing on that one, and like because it's such a big question, right? And how do you pose
Yeah.
that to the kids, which I did then do with my own kiddos. And I just saw the other day the list of things that we had said. So I'm going to spend some time looking this week and like how many things did we get to, and
Yeah.
and just kind of reflect on the year that way. But gotta check
Yeah.
out Shane's episode for sure.
Yeah. No, that was a good one. And you're right. I thought about that a lot. And I remember I was teaching an undergraduate course at the time, and I remember telling those students, like, you need to listen to this episode. And
Yeah.
I didn't do that a lot. That's not, and I didn't want to, I didn't want to be like pushing my work on them. But after
Yeah.
that interview, I was like, you all need to listen to this. You are all going to be music teachers, and I need you to hear this, and I need you to think about it. So yeah, I agree. It was a really good one.
Mm-hmm. What was one of your top favorites?
Yeah. It's tough, but yeah, I think for me, I would say episode 62 when we talked to Kathleen Jacoby.
Okay.
Kathleen's a high school band director, and just the way that she talked about including her students in every element was it was inspiring. Like, I wish that I could be in her band program because it just sounds like, it sounds like such a great place to be. The students, it's their program. It's not hers. She doesn't dictate every little thing, but at the same time, she also just doesn't let them, flounder and flail. She's there to support them, and she's there to help them grow and to develop the skills they need. But it's exactly what a student-centered program should look like. And it was wonderful.
Yeah. I mean, just it was embedded in everything she did, right? Like the message was loud and clear. This is for you. You belong here. Just with all the exercises and things they did, really, it was really cool to listen to.
Yeah, that was definitely a favorite for me. So
yeah.
So in a minute, we're going to play for you just some excerpts, some of our favorites, because you've got to go back and listen to those good ones. So we'll put together some of those, so make sure you stay tuned, and then we'll put links to all of them in the show notes. So if you want to go back, maybe you missed the episode, you want to go back and listen to it, it'll be really easy for you to find right there. Just a couple other quick reminders. If you haven't checked out the website recently, passthebatonbook.com, be sure to do that, because we do have a whole section of resources that are basically just free downloads, things that you can download and use. And in many cases, you can edit to make it your own. Make it your own. Make sure that it's going to work for your students. So there's a bunch of things in there, and we're always adding to them as we create things. We throw new ideas, new resources up there all the time. So make sure you check out the website. And if you're not already following us on social media, it's on Facebook. It's again Pass the Baton Book. Instagram, I think the handle is Pass the Baton Music Ed. So make sure that you're following us there, so you can find out when season 4 starts. You will hear about all the updates we make to the coffee club. We've been talking about maybe doing a book giveaway this summer. We'll see. We tend to do those periodically. Yeah, but you'll want to make sure you're following on social media for that, or on the mailing list. We have the Take 5 mailing list, comes out every other Tuesday. I promise it's never going to be spam. I don't have time for that. You don't have time for that. But we just put out an email every other Tuesday that has, if there's a new podcast episode, it shares that. And then it also just shares some additional resources, links, things that we think you might like. And we've started throwing in a something to try tomorrow as well. Catherine, didn't one of the people in the course say that was one of their favorite things?
The things in the book, the things to try tomorrow, were like, what was kind of the comment was like, actually could use them, which is right. I mean, like, they were very practical, which we know because we tried them in our own classrooms, but to then know that they transfer and people found them helpful is it's great.
Yeah. So we've been making sure to add one of those to the Take 5 each week as well, so that you have something you can try the next day, or, if you read it in July, something you could try in September. You don't have to do it over the summer unless you really want to. So that's going to be in the mailing list, and you can subscribe to that. Again, look in the show notes. There's going to be a link for that, and you can also subscribe through the website.
Student-centered. It's using the voice, hearing the voice of the students. In the presentation, I talked about, in my opinion, the 5 most important questions we could ask. And to me, number 1 is, what would you like to learn about music? Mm-hmm. Loaded question, scary question. We don't have the time to actually address everything in the question, but that's the starting point. Simply asking the kids, what would you like to learn? I talked a lot, I'm sorry.
No, that was great. No. And I could see where your idea of starting with pre-service teachers, because we gotta get out of our own, what we do, what we were taught to do, like, we could try this new thing and then just make it, traditional with just a new thing, Yeah. So to kind of get out of our own thinking is awesome.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I appreciate you sharing that too, to say like, this is how I started, because I
Yeah,
think that's sometimes I think we're afraid, we're afraid to do something new because we might mess it up or we might do it wrong. And the fact is, like, yeah, we're probably going to
Yeah.
do some
We're
things we
going
would do
to.
differently the second time around, but that's part of it, right?
yeah, we're gonna mess this up. Yeah,
And if you hadn't taken that first step, you wouldn't be where you are now, and the kids wouldn't be where they are now. So
100%.
even
Yeah.
if the first step is messy, it's okay.
Yeah, and like if we're not willing to be the lifelong learners, who else will be? As a teacher, right?
Yeah.
That's what we're here to do.
Yeah. And also it's kind of freeing because I'm not the the person who knows everything in the room. Because I don't. Right. So
Yes,
I'm not, and that's okay. And I
but
can learn from my students.
the problem with that is that's not what we were taught.
Totally.
It's so hard. It's so hard. Like one of the running jokes in my conducting class, and it's so weird because I have a new group of kids and it's lasted, is that I can't spell. And I openly say it like, listen, if y'all see something on the board, just tell me to fix it. I'm not I'm gonna mess this up. If for no other reason, I move fast. And I'm just sometimes I make mistakes. But a lot of people wouldn't open themselves up to that level of critique and vulnerability because we're supposed to be the masters in the room.
Yeah.
And that's draining, guys. Sorry.
And you mentioned that a lot of people say, "Oh, student-centered," but it ultimately comes back to what they, the teacher, want. And I think we see that a lot in ensembles, especially. And you can even, like, we had a guest last season who talked a lot about the language the teacher uses, right? Well, oh, but my band and my, and it's like, well, but what about
not our and we, my, yeah.
Right. Yeah. So do you find that in ensembles it's trickier, or do you find ensemble directors have a harder time, or not necessarily?
I personally would say that ensemble directors don't know what student-centered teaching is because they've never experienced it. None of us have sat in an ensemble in which we were empowered. We were in positions where the power comes from your skill and your ability to be able to make the music. And so a lot of us rehearse like our college band director rehearsed, our college orchestra director rehearsed with none of the players. So I think it's very much easy to do in an ensemble setting if you're focused on the ability of kids and not stuck in the cycle of chasing performances.
Yeah, I 100% agree with Tom on that one. And a lot of it comes down to being able to identify where the shift needs to be made. Because I'll even double down on what Tom said. I know that the experience that I had as a music teacher gave me a ton. But if I were to teach now the way I was taught, I would probably have a very tough time. Society has changed a bunch. Students are different. We just had a pandemic. Still kind of having a pandemic. So I can't go into my classroom and operate my rehearsal like I remember my rehearsals being operated. And if I did, I'm not sure that I would be able to have students that are able to see success, and I think it would be way more difficult to try to operate the way that things were done when I was in high school.
Yeah.
And it's not a gimmick. It's not gimmicky. It's not doing things that seem kid friendly or something like that. I think we are just as much of an academic subject as English language arts. And so there's a lot of elements from those classes that can be brought into the ensemble setting. They're not mutually exclusive. Learning's learning.
You talked earlier about the article that came out. So one of the examples from that is the student feedback from how we are rehearsing. So I am going to teach them and demonstrate for them or use recordings of this is what it should sound like. This is what good tone should sound like. But then I need them to respond back if we've achieved that or not. And I need them to use correct vocabulary. A big aspect of compassionate criticism, right, is to remove these value-laden words. And the kids are so quick to say crappy or sucky or, and they tend to actually be much harder on themselves than we are. But using, if we're talking tone, fuzzy, airy, clear, dark, bright, more descriptive. And in fact, just yesterday I was telling them, I don't even want you to tell me if you like it or not. Pretend that I'm blind and you're describing what's on the smartboard right now. Use what colors and fonts and sizes. That's what I'm going for, is true description of what we hear. And then once we can describe it accurately, then we can make judgment calls about if we want it to change. So developing that trust and the ability to mess up without this all comes into growth mindset, right? That a mistake is not an inherently bad thing. It's a correction, and we grow from it. So if we're doing tone quality, and at the very beginning, I might not call out individuals. We'll call out a section. All right. So trumpets are going to play this F and match this sound that's coming from the trombones. And everyone who's not a trumpet, I want you to just listen. And then the kids are going to use those word banks that we described and say, this is what I heard when those people played, or when that group played. And we talk a lot about how much easier it is to listen critically when it's not yourself. Not only does it change, what you hear, reverberations in your skull, but when you're playing, you're thinking about playing and you're listening. So it's easier to just listen than it is to listen and produce sound. So remove one of the variables. And then that also makes it a little more trusting that, of course I can't hear myself as well as other people can. So that's going to make me more open to feedback. And as they get more trusting, we can go into individuals playing. I almost never call out individuals unless we're talking really basic concepts or pitch matching at the beginning. After that, they know, they can hear it. And I think a lot has changed in our world post-pandemic with feelings and how we emote those feelings. I never want a kid to come in and feel like they're going to be put on the spot in my class in a negative way, or unless it's me asking for a volunteer, which is a very, very different scenario. So we build up from there until we get to the point where we can run a section of music, and then I can ask them what they heard. And with my top group, I can leave it completely open-ended. With the younger groups, I'm going to be very specific about, what did you hear about pulse? And their instinct is to say that it was bad, because why would you be asking it? And so I tell them, I'm going to intentionally ask them about all these different things, because I'm not telling you if it was bad or good. I want you to tell me. And then if they say the pulse was separating when the trumpets came in, or when the snare drum was not lining up with the flutes, then, okay, so how do you want to change that? And then they will use one of the things we've done before, like, okay, let's all count and figure along, or let's wind pattern, or let's have the snare drum play while everyone else sings. Again, as they're younger, I might prep them. I might coach them a little bit on, maybe we could try one of these 3 things, and they choose which one's going to be most relevant. But I found before that some of the times, if I think a trick is going to work and they don't respond, when I move to the back of the classroom, I figure out, it's because they really can't hear from back here, right? I really do need that feedback about what is going to help them self-correct most effectively. And then we try it again and we say, was it better, same, or worse? Or, we'll do thumbs up, thumbs side, thumbs down. And we'll do it until they feel comfortable with it. And then we move on to the next thing. I got microphones set up in my classroom last year. It was one of those, I just hadn't gotten around to doing it post-pandemic. And another director mentioned how helpful it was. And I'm like, why am I not doing this? That's ridiculous. So I have the microphone going almost constantly. And then we can just go back and play back real quickly. What did you hear? And was that accurate? And with the really good microphones, it's a good indicator. My phone would make everything sound tinny, and bright. And I want them to have a real sense of, it exposes overplaying very quickly. It's the classic, my oboe always is shocked. I'm very loud. Yes, you are. And they wouldn't hear the other people say that, but they would hear it. They would recognize that on the recording. And there are other times where they go, we sound wonderful. And I say, yes. And you need to hear that. You need to hear, be validated that what you're hearing and what you're interpreting is correct.
Yeah.
So in terms of practical tips, we do a lot of that. And it's amazing how quickly they self-adjust as they get better and better at doing it. But again, as a teacher, I might narrow it down as they're younger. Just think about pulse, just think about matching, just think about, tuning between the people on other sides of you. And then we will start to expand and think in more and more things. But it also helps the buy-in with the easier stuff too, right? That intentionality of, I know you know the fingerings to F stretches, but can you do the fingerings and listen to the two people on either side of you and listen to the tuba and listen to the front? And if you're not doing those things perfectly, we're not ready to move on. So we just had our winter concert and we're doing like grade 2 music right now because they're not sight reading the articulations and the dynamics. And I said, you know these notes and rhythms. So we can do the next thing, right? Like your brain can process more information. They're like, you're right. We totally can. So it's not just notes and fingerings and rhythms.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where we are right now.
So my question is, someone like me who's really good at dots.
Yeah.
Or really any teachers who the songwriting is not something that we do naturally. And I know you're going to say, so you can still teach it, but what are, like, you mentioned before, like we started, you had some like tips and templates and
yeah, I have a bunch of stuff. Yeah, I do. There are, so there's
me.
Yeah. So I'm going to tell you two things.
Okay.
I think you do write songs naturally. I don't think that you can really help it. I think every musician has been walking around and heard some snip of melody somewhere. And you're like, is that something? I think that might be my own thing. I think I might be having a thought.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I definitely can think back to like, times when I would sing random instructions at my band. So maybe that's songwriting.
It's the beginning. Definitely. One of the things, the only reason I bring that up is I think a lot of people think, I won't actually, you know what? I'm not going to construct it that way. I will say that folks who are new to almost anything, and I will say this as a person who is an anxious person, they get anxious about whether or not they're doing it right. Mm-hmm. And that's good. That means you care. You care that you're doing it right. Great. There isn't really a bar to writing a song. What do you need to do to write a song? You just write a song. That's it. It's like a tautology, right? If you wanted to be a professional songwriter, then you could worry about the quality of your craft. But as teachers, I think our goal should be to make people aware that there is craft, to introduce elements of that craft, but we do not necessarily have to be experts at that craft. Like, I am not an expert saxophonist, but I have taught many students how to play the first notes of the saxophone, right? So just being aware that you don't have to be an all-knowing expert, you don't have to have a depth of craft. Your songs don't have to be any better than your students' songs. Like, don't even worry about it. Because what we're trying to do is we're trying to give our students musical tools and agency, right, in their own world. And so this is just one other set of tools that you can develop and help them develop. So like, don't feel like just because you're good at the dots, you can't do the songwriting stuff, because you totally can. And in fact, being good at the dots is a good way in, because once you have the dots, you can think about them. So think about your favorite dots and why they're meaningful to you. Like, if you have a melody that you absolutely love, a horn melody, for example, right? Like, I know you're playing horn in the concert band right now, mm-hmm. Teresa. So do you have a line that you absolutely love that you're playing? Maybe not this time. It varies. But think about that line and think about what makes it effective for you. What does it make you see? Right? Stick a visual on it. Then write out that visual. Then sing the visual to your line. Congratulations. You have now written the first line of your song. But thinking about why you love those things and how they function works really well if you already have a grasp of the dots. Applying the dots to that when you don't have a grasp of the dots is empowering, because it lets you see it in a different way. It's just different ways of seeing the same thing. As far as stuff you could do tomorrow, I sent you a bunch of stuff in a Google Drive, which is made public. You can post that in the description of wherever this is. And also my website, which is Mr. MR, it's MR, MrAlexAdams.com, has it has a resource called Songwriting 3 Ways, which is 3 sort of set menus of ways to start songs. 3 lyrics first approaches, 3 ways of creating melody and harmony, and then 3 ways of preserving. So you can choose your own adventure through that. And you can get like 9 iterative ways to develop it. And I would highly suggest that teachers, before they teach songwriting, just write a song on your own. Like tomorrow, like sit down, grab a starter or a prompt, and just write something. And it doesn't even have to be a whole song. It could just be like 3 lines that you like, just to get the muscles moving.
When I started teaching, it was like what I know, my students, this is me, this is what I know, and here I'm going to teach you. It was never like, okay, what you want to understand, what you want to know. The moment I got that nick of it, that idea that to hold on, why students are not completely engaged, there is something missing. There is something which I want. I want. There's something not happening, which the audience needs it over here, and that's the students. So that moment I started figuring it out, like what is something lacking, so that's where like I started discovering, I started finding it out, and that leads to my inquiry to come up with the conclusion that, okay, this is something, this is something really needs it, where students should be asked that this is what you want to learn, or they should be given some choices, and let them choose. And as a facilitator, you take that particular knowledge ahead with them. So inquiry, I would say, like it's to finding it out and going a little deeper with that. It's providing choices to students. That's that which keeps them really engaged in the classroom.
Yeah. I just love it too, that because you're talking about, didn't you say 6 and 7-year-olds too? I mean, I know that you've taught other ages as well, but a lot of people say, but even the littles can do that. And of course they can, right? They're so curious and they do know what they want. So
true. Like I was leading the department in my previous school, and I used to get these kind of questions as well, that what kind of inquiry you would do with, if you're doing it with KG1, KG2, who are like 4 or 5 years old. But again, you can do it. You can set up the classroom in such a way that they come and they start looking at, the curiosity is in their eyes, that time. Yeah. And that's how, as a teacher, you get it like, okay, this student is looking at this instrument, you want to touch or feel, and ask these kind of questions. So you build that kind of environment and the inquiry happens.
Yeah.
It's when you get into that, like it feels it's so easy. It's so by default. But to build that understanding, firstly, I think it takes a little time. But when you're getting into that, 7 years ago, like I feel I have recorded my lessons where I see I'm standing and I have like many students sitting in front of me, and I'm like a preacher and speaking and going and showing and playing, doing all this stuff. But at it gradually, I have seen like my after 3 years, 4 years videos, I'm nowhere in this video. For appraisal, we used to video our lessons, right? Yeah. Like after 3-4 years, I am nowhere in the video. Like I sometimes think, was I teaching in this class? It's all about students. So that drastic change really brings happiness, joy to me in my teaching. Yeah.
If you liked today's episode, you will love the passthebatonbook.com website, where you can find free resources, coaching services, and how to support Pass the Baton. Speaking of support, don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. Thanks again for listening.